topic for first briefing is the human rights protection work in Crimea, and we have Ms. Reinke, who's representing the Association of Repressed Peoples and the Human Rights Activists.
Happy to be here, and I'm happy to be in Kiev, only my second time here. I'm Sarah Reinke, representative of the Society for Threatened Peoples. This is an international human rights organization, and we are situated in Germany. Who are we? We have been founded roughly 50 years ago with this aim of supporting threatened ethnic, linguistic and religious minorities worldwide. Because the idea behind this mandate, as we say, is that you can say something about the status of democracy when looking at the situation of minorities. And I always say we are quite a typical German organization because, as you know, during Nazism and World War II, the minorities in Germany, like the Jews, the Sinti and Roma, they were killed and persecuted against. So this is quite logical that we were founded in Germany. How do we work? Like, we are an independent organization which has members. We don't do projects as many NGOs do, but we do political campaigns, like informational work. For example, in the case of Ukraine, and here, for example, with this focus on minorities, on the Crimean Tatars, for example, we try to collect information from Crimea, translate it into German. We do this on a daily basis, and we have a blog on our online site, And so we try through the blog, through press releases, through letters to, for example, deputies of the German Bundestag. We try to spread this information and also try to do something against Russian propaganda in Germany, which is very strong. Also, the Society for Threatened Peoples has this status at the UN. So this enables us to, for example, invite representatives of minorities to Geneva, to New York, and they can speak up for themselves, and they can themselves tell about their problems. And we have this rule since a couple of years that each year in each session of the UN Human Rights Council, we are issuing a status, a letter where we describe the situation in Ukraine with the focus on minorities. Why Ukraine? Like I said, around 50 years ago, this organization was founded. And our founding members, they have quite a close relationship also with Ukraine. And they supported, for example, dissidents from Ukraine who were in the Soviet gulags. And he already, our founder, he knew about the fate of the Crimean Tatars, how they were deported in 1944. And he had contacts to Uzbekistan and the national movement of Crimean Tatars there. So we are following up this situation since a long time and intensifying our work, of course, since 2 years and since the annexation. And for us, it is very important also to work in Germany because we see that the German public is quite divided. There is a pro-Russian, pro-Putin force, which is quite strong, and then there are people who try to look at this situation in a more differentiated way, and they try to understand more deeply, and they understand that Ukraine has its own development. And for example, some of my friends, even when I talk to them and I said, we are having an event in the embassy of Ukraine, they say, what? Ukraine has an embassy? I thought Ukraine was part of Russia. So still there are people in Germany who don't know that Ukraine is independent. And I don't know what they did the last 10 years, that they must just have slept. And we see that this annexation of Crimea is really a catastrophe in terms of the human rights development there. So the real question for us is how can we really influence the human rights situation on the ground in Crimea? And we have connections with Ukrainian human rights defenders and also with Russian human rights defenders. And we sort of, you know, we monitored or we learned that there is a big gap now. They lost, for example, trust between each other. And when they were invited to Germany, for example, the Ukrainians, they didn't want to shake hands with their Russian colleagues, even though they know each other from Soviet times. It's just the same generation, but through this Putin politics, they have no trust in each other anymore. So one aim also is to say, you know, what do people really need as support on Crimea? Like, how can we really effectively and concretely help in cases of human rights violations, other than just spreading the information, which is this one thing, but the other thing is Crimea is isolated. There are no international organizations there. We always try to say, you know, the OSCE must have a permanent mission on Crimea, but it's very hard to push through these demands. Yeah, and today I'm here because I'm taking part in the Crimean Tatar Youth Forum, which is organized here in Kiev, and I was quite impressed because over 150 young Crimean Tatars from Ukraine, from Crimea, but also from the Crimean Tatar diaspora arrived yesterday, and we already had a lot of interesting talks, and their topic is the future of Crimean Tatars. And they will look at the Crimean Tatar community, which is now in Ukraine. A lot of them are here in Kiev. And they will look on the situation on Crimea, and they will also, of course, look at the situation in the different places of diaspora and how we can cooperate better on also guaranteeing the survival of Crimean Tatar culture, language, and all these aspects of life which are so important for the Crimean Tatars. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sarah. I will start from the end, actually. As you said, that you come here for the youth forum, right? And could you clarify who exactly invited you to this forum and what NGOs in Ukraine you cooperate with?
One of the NGOs who is organizing it is Crimea. And there are a lot of individuals, like Aisha Mehmetova, for example, and people who are close to the Mejlis, who are all organizing this. And we are very happy about this. And about the Ukrainian NGOs, for example, I work closely with the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group, and also the Helsinki group, which is an umbrella organization for human rights organizations. So, and there are some other contacts.
Thank you for that. The next question is, as you said, that your organization started working on issues related to Ukraine since 70s of the last century, as I understood. But when this new urgent need of making world pay attention to what was happening in Ukraine appeared, did it happen since Euromaidan, before or later?
Maybe I can put it this way. Our intensification, that we work more intensely, is in reaction to the need of the Ukrainian diaspora in Germany. They came to me and said, you know, Sarah, let's do something together, because they were very worried, and we had I had this one banner saying Putin hands off Ukraine, and I was going from one protest march to the other, each day somewhere else, in front of the Ukrainian embassy, but also in front of the Russian embassy, in front of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. So the Ukrainian diaspora, especially in Berlin, they organized themselves. And we said, you know, let's do a Euromaidan group Berlin. And this was founded actually in my office. So the people came to me, and I think this is important because it's not our idea as a German organization to do something, but it's a reaction to the people who said, you know, we need to do something together.
Thank you, Sarah. My next question also would be that you said like your main activity is like informational work, yes, right? So you send out some press releases and stuff like that. How many, if you know, press releases you sent out already, and like, do you organize or have you organized any kind of open discussions, maybe or round tables in Germany regarding these events in Ukraine?
Well, I can say that maybe per month we are sending out 2 at least press releases, and then we have organized a lot of events together also with other organizations like roundtables and discussions and fora. We invited also, for example, representatives of Crimean Tatars to come to Berlin to speak to people who are working, for example, in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And now on the 18th of May, like the day commemorating the deportation of the Crimean Tatars, we had 2 big events. One in the embassy of Ukraine, where we showed a movie and we had this discussion. And afterwards, we all assembled in front of the Brandenburg Gate, which is on the Paris Square. It's one of the most like important squares in Berlin. And there were more than 100 people, and we had like these candles outlining the peninsula Crimea, and we sang the Crimean Tatar songs and Ukrainian songs, and we spread information. So we have this activist also part, and of course informational work. And what we also plan for September is a week of Crimean Tatar culture. We invite artists, for example, and other activists from Ukraine and Crimea to come to Germany. And there will be, for example, also one day of a workshop with the topic of advocacy, so that you know people know how to advocate for their rights better than they do at the moment.
Thank you, Sarah. Next question. As you know, the military conflict in eastern Ukraine and like annexation of Crimea happened for over 2 years ago, and it is really not easy to monitor all these events, especially from abroad, to highlight these events. In your opinion, does German media manage to do it, at least from time to time these days?
It depends on the media, I think. I think there are quite a few very serious and very good journalists that we have. And I know that, for example, a journalist who monitored the whole Maidan movement, all the protests on Maidan Square, she gained some prize for this monitoring and broadcasting because she did it so well. So there are people who really want to do it professionally and good, but it's not so easy because you know there are a lot of other conflicts in the world now. Many refugees from Syria came to Germany. So one of the aims of my work is also to keep up these topics in the public sphere or in the media.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a couple of more questions. They will be more like technical. So like your organization, the headquarters is in Germany, right? But also there are some branches in other countries. Could you specify in which exactly?
Yeah, well, the headquarters is actually in the city of Göttingen, which is in the central part of Germany, and there's this office I'm responsible for in Berlin. And then we have like a Society for Threatened Peoples International, which is an umbrella organization for our offices in Austria, in Switzerland, in Bosnia, in Iraq. So we have like this network.
And as I heard, maybe I'm mistaken, there are some plans to establish one more organization in Ukraine. Right.
Yeah, that is my project or my dream, because I think to have a human rights organization focusing on the minorities here in Ukraine, including, of course, Crimea, would really make sense, because their voice could be louder. And I have the impression that now, in this time of transformation, the minorities would have a chance to maybe better than at the moment influence also decisions in government structures or in the administration. And also, of course, in case of, like in reference to information flow, which is also a problem for myself. Like, it's always hard to find good contact persons in the minorities, for example. So if I would have a person here who would really guarantee this information flow, my work would also be easier. And the idea is to have representatives of all minorities in the board of this Society for Threatened Peoples Ukraine. So let's see, I'll work on it.
Right. Dear colleagues, are there any questions or clarifications here, please?
Olena Shupkina, Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Dear Sarah, could you please mention, we know that Russian propaganda is very strong in Germany also. And your organization is reporting about what is going on Crimea, maybe also in Ukraine with Crimean Tatars. Do you think is it enough? Such reports. So, do you believe? Do Germans, for example, Russian Germans, believe what is going on Crimea? That there are some withdrawals with human rights or something like that. If it's not enough only to report what is going on there, so what should we do more for this?
I'm afraid it's never enough because it's quite, the Russian system is working very professionally. But I have one funny thing. For example, I read an article in a journal called German Foreign Policy, and they listed all the visits of Mejlis members, say Refat Chubarov, to Germany from starting in 2005. And they were accusing us, of the Society for Threatened Peoples, of supporting these Mejlis members in Germany. And then, of course, all this propaganda. Mejlis is financed by the US, and they are pro-Turkish and stuff like this. But actually, somebody is watching very closely what we are doing and what other Ukrainians or the Crimean Tatars are doing in Germany. And they think that we have too much influence. So this is like, I take it like a compliment, like the work is seen and it's watched and also criticized. So of course we need to do more and we need to be more present. But like things like this are you can already characterize as a success.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any more questions or clarifications? I have a couple of more technical questions, right? The first one is, could you specify how many colleagues, your colleagues, are engaged in the work regarding Ukraine's question? I mean, Crimea's annexation and stuff like that. I mean, at Germany's office.
Well, we have one coordinator, he's a volunteer, but he has been working on this topic for about 20 years. And then I have colleagues, they are cooperating, say, on press releases, on reports, but really it's me who is doing this work on the issue of Ukraine and Crimean Tatars. So we are not such a big organization, but we try to be small and powerful.
Thank you, Sarah. And the last question from me, how could anyone get in touch with you? I mean, is there any website or Facebook page? Please say.
Everything. Like we have, of course, a website. It's in German and in English. And, of course, also Facebook pages, also in German and in English. Then we have this blog, which is called Ukraine-Russia Chronicle on Crimea. So there are all like these online possibilities. And, of course, I'm always happy to contact people directly and sort of, widen my network of contacts here in Ukraine.
Thank you, Sarah. Good luck with the forum that you will be participating in. and looking forward to seeing you here in the nearest future. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks.
Шановні колеги,
Dear colleagues, the next event will be at 10 o'clock sharp.